RMJ movie reviews back again with an on-the-fly movie review, looking grimy with the Bruce Willis last Boy Scout 5 o'clock shadow, still getting over some kind of bug, some kind of sickness again. So hey y'all, I'm hanging in there the best I can. Well, this on-the-fly movie review is going to be of the much unnecessary, much unwanted remake of the 1970s Charles Bronson classic, Death Wish, starring Bruce Willis, directed by Eli Roth, of Hostel 1 and 2, Cabin Fever, and The Green Inferno. Well, like I said, guys, I'm not a fan of remakes, but, you know, especially when they're soulless cash grabs with a title that they just want to sell. But I do like quite a bit of remakes. I enjoy the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake starring Jessica Biel from 2003. I like the Hills Have Eyes remake. You know, I think those are two worthy additions. You know, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing. That was way back before the remake trend, but, you know, I like remakes like that. But then we go down the rough pass, the rough remakes that are unnecessary, like Psycho, starring Vince Vaughn, if anybody remembers that. You know, I'm not particularly a fan of the Friday the 13th 09 remake, reboot, whatever you want to call it. Prom Night, I guess that's kind of sort of a remake. You know, we got a... Now, the Rob Zombie Halloween remake, I kind of really look at that as like 30% remake, and, you know, the other 60 or 50% is prequel movie. I actually like Rob Zombie's take on it. Not saying that it's good, but it entertained me. But anyway, on to this remake of Death Wish. Surprisingly, I did not hate this movie. If in a mild, it was mildly entertaining. I'm gonna hit some points that it follows the same storyline as the original Charles Bronson movie. You know, man who does his little working job. In this case, he's not an architect. He's a surgeon in this film, but his name, Paul Kersey, is the same. Elizabeth Adventures in Babysitting's leaving Las Vegas shoe gets murdered. The daughter gets assaulted and is in a coma. Minus the very titillating, I'm going to use that word, not titillating to me, but the way it was shot by Michael Winner, and graphic rape scene of the 1974 film, and fellatio thrown into the mix, brutal fellatio by Jeff Goldblum, the Fly himself. That's all taken out here, but which is good. There's an icky enough uncomfortable moment that involves the daughter that I thought was just enough to make you to feel uneasy. And after all that happens, Bruce Willis goes on a rampage, fighting crime. Well, in this case, murdering people who terrorize society. And in the process, unlike the Bronson version, tracking down the direct culprits of the crime against his wife and daughter. And it was a mildly entertaining film. It's an unnecessary film. Like every other reviewer, professional reviewer, YouTuber has said, it's really bad timing because of like a lot of these mass killing shootings that have been going on the last couple years. And the thing is, this is my idea about it. This is not the 1970s or the 1980s or the 1990s anymore, where you could just have this movie cartoonish violence that involves guns without it really affecting people, because these psychopaths are going on a rampage in real life and actually doing all this crazy stuff. Like when you saw a movie like Death Wish, or a movie like, I'm just going off the top of my head, like Commando or whatever in the 80s, you know, you didn't have the internet to publicize all these mass killings and all this stuff. Although I think these things were going on, they weren't as prevalent as they are now. So, you know, it was a different climate, different universe. You could, yeah, those films could be taken as violence, but it wasn't reflected in real life. You know, it was just as a silly comic book thingamajiggy. Now the same can't be said. So I think this Death Wish movie, although for me, again, I'm an actor and a filmmaker, so for me, I can look at it for what it is. It's a film, but I just don't know if society and the rest of the world can take it that way. You know, a mother and daughter being brutally assaulted and it not affecting people. I will say on some level, I'm noticing as I'm getting older, and again, I like my share of violent films. I enjoy violent films, not in that sense of like real life violence. Real life violence and movie violence are two totally different things. You know, I've seen my share of moments of violence in real life. You know, they're two totally different things. You know what I mean? You can't get into a fist fight and get punched and kneed in the balls 75 times or whatever and get up and keep fighting. In real life, if you get punched really good, you know, and your head hits the concrete, you're out, you know. Or if you get shot in the leg or in the arm, you're not going to be able to get up and continue the gun battle. You know, at least maybe in the real life circumstances. I'm not really sure about people who've actually been in real battle. But anyway, I'm not digressing to that far. Just making the point being that it's a different time. There's a lot of violence that's reflected in real life. So I don't really understand their thought process when they made this film. I just don't understand how they thought it would sell. Maybe they were going strictly from the title. But even then, most of the people who it kind of seems like this remake is aimed at don't know who Charles Bronson is, don't know that there's a Death Wish 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm totally perplexed as to what their mindset was in making this film. But taking all that out of the equation, for me, as a person who grew up with all the Bronson canon movies and all the Death Wish sequels, even there is a Death Wish 5, people who don't know that, called I think it's called The Face of Death with the subtitle. I hate Death Wish 5. If you take this movie as something along the lines of Death Wish 2 or 3 or 4, then it's mildly enjoyable. Although nothing can top the salacious sleaze of Death Wish 2, which I'm not even going to get into Death Wish 2. We all know how far they took it in that film. And the marvelous street finale gun battle of Death Wish 3 just can't be touched. Death Wish 4 is kind of meh. But I think if you view it along the lines of 2, 3, or 4, you'll be okay. You'll have a pretty good time. Some people have said Bruce Willis is sleepwalking through this movie. In my personal opinion, I think this is the one thing about Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis still has that charisma. He is charismatic in this film. There's moments, I don't feel his performance is consistent. I feel like there's times when Bruce is sleepwalking. And then I feel like there's times when he's doing the red box, extraction type acting. And then there's times when I do get the feel of that old school, Last Boy Scout, Die Hard 1 and 2, moonlighting Bruce Willis. He does show up in sprinkles in there. So I will say Eli Roth managed to get a little bit more out of Bruce Willis than I've seen from him in a couple years. But again, it's not a consistent performance. But I will say I think Bruce still does show a lot of that charisma that he had from back in the day. So I think his performance is okay. As far as the other performance, we got an Adventure in Babysitting's reunion. Elizabeth Shue and Vincent D'Onofrio, because remember he was Thor in Thor the mechanic in Adventures in Babysitting. Vincent D'Onofrio, he's been fantastic from day one. He's great here. His role is pointless, but he's good. Elizabeth Shue, for her short time, she's still beautiful. She's good. All the bad guy characters are good. I think everybody is good considering the material of the movie. And what they try to do with this Death Wish is they kind of try to blend Death Wish 1 and then like the cartoonish cheesy violence of Death Wish 2 and 3 and 4. And it almost kind of works, but still is a little bit off. Bruce Willis does bring moments of a little bit of humanity to Paul Kersey. Again, not consistently, but moments Bruce does. The gun battles, the gun battles are fun. Eli Roth kind of strikes the balance of like a little bit of like gun battles that you might have seen in Planet Terror, Robert Rodriguez's movie, and he blends a little bit of the hostile kind of gory violence aspect into it. Of course, particularly with that scene that they keep showing in the previews where the car Jack's gonna do the job or whatever he says. So the gun battles are fun. Everybody's been talking about this. There's one which I'm not gonna give away. Bruce Willis rolls up on this drug dealer dude and his boys in broad daylight. And let me tell you, I will say that was the most hardcore, raw, old school throwback to an 80s or 90s action moment I have ever seen. I'm not going to give it away, but I will say that has been a long time when I in the theater was like, that's how you do it, baby. It was gangster. I want to almost buy the Blu-ray just to replay that moment. It was great. It was great. And there's a couple of fist-pumping moments like that. All in all, it's an unnecessary film, but I had a mildly good time. It was okay. It was all right. It ain't gonna be out too much long. I'd love to hear Eli Roth's commentary. I'm not interested in hearing Bruce Willis talk about the character because in my personal opinion, just as a viewer who's been watching young Bruce Willis to this Bruce Willis now, I think Bruce Willis is burned out. In my personal opinion, he's a veteran. He's been doing this a very long time. I think the man is burned out from doing this stuff. That's just my opinion. But I'm not really too interested in hearing his take on it. I don't really think there's too much for him to say. Be interesting to hear his take on the original Bronson film. But other than that, I think it's an okay time. I've kind of rambled on a little bit too long about a Death Wish remake, but all in all, it's a decent time waster. I had a mildly good time. It ends anticlimactically, and of course, it ends with that classic Charles Bronson moment with the thing and Bruce Willis. You know, when Bruce does it, I'm not feeling as hard in it the way Bronson, because the way Bronson did it, you're just like, yeah, this is legit. This dude is on a rampage. But I will say, a film that balances kind of the is it right vigilante justice. And now I know everybody's been talking about Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, and I really like that movie. I was working at a movie theater when that came out, and that's a fun movie. It's on Netflix now. Check it out, guys. But I really think Jodie Foster's movie, The Brave One, underrated film. Terrence Howard is in it. That movie is great. So if I recommend a vigilante movie that really balances the morale with should you be doing this, you all check out The Brave One with Jodie Foster. I think people are sleeping on that movie. I bought that on DVD and I love that. I love that movie so much. And that's a movie when Jodie Foster and her boyfriend are assaulted. Oh man, and they take the dog. You feel it, man. Like it's so crushing in that movie. And I think the psychology of a victim of violence, and if they started acting out in this antisocial type of behavior, I think that movie examines it with a little bit more care and is done much better. And the violence in The Brave One isn't really like, I mean, it's action movie. It gets a little Charles Bronson-y a little bit, you know, and of course it exploits it a little bit. But I think that movie handles the concept with a little bit more care. So, for fans of the old school canon movies and people who know this genre of exploitation, it's a mild recommendation. Maybe you all might want to check it out at a dollar movie. It's a mild recommendation from RMJ Movie Reviews. So all in all, it was okay. Decent time waster. Didn't hate it. Didn't love it. It was okay. It gets extra points for that ice cream man scene. So I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to see it or not. Thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and leave comments down below about Bruce Willis, Eli Roth, and you know, how you feel about this Death Wish remake. RMJ Movie Reviews. I'll see you guys soon.